When I talk about building an overcome mindset, there's three components, and part of so the three components of an overcome mindset are awareness, preparation, and action. Those are the three components to build an overcome mindset. And the awareness piece is a big part. And sometimes it forces us to go into dark places that people don't want to go. No one wants to think about, well, oh my God, what would happen if I found myself in the center of a mass shooting scenario? People don't want to think about what would happen if someday I lost my spouse. What would happen if my spouse was diagnosed with a dangerous illness? What would happen if a member of my family was a victim of sexual assault or sexual trauma? Those are dark things, but we don't live in a perfect world. Bad things happen to good people. And part of an overcome mindset is awareness that these things could happen. Now we get into preparation. If we know these things could happen, how do we prepare for them? How do we train our family? How do we train ourselves to recognize and hopefully avoid these situations if possible? And there's all kinds of things that we can do with that. Obviously, the levels of preparation for the average everyday individual, they can do those things. But it's awareness and preparation. Then, of course, if you find yourself in that situation, the awareness and preparation enable us to take action. But there is a level of both training, there is a level of recognition that these things can happen that allow you to take action. You can't get to action without going through the first two steps. I frequently tell people you can't create an overcome mindset in a dangerous or crisis situation. It happens before.
Yeah, what a great lesson, and what an important, empowering message to help people really figure out the awareness in itself is a start, because a lot of people are so into their phones. They're so into they don't even know what's happening in and around them. I have been to gas stations where, you're filling up your tank. And one time this happened to our own family. I'm filling up my tank and I run in to go grab something, and I run out and gas is pouring everywhere. It didn't shut off. My whole family was sitting in the car, completely unaware of what was happening. Everybody was watching a video and I got out. I was like, guys, first of all, we're not in a great area, so we should have our heads out of our phones. Second of all, be aware. Like, did nobody hear the clicking and then the gas going everywhere? And it was very quick. I caught it pretty quick, but I was embarrassed. But I was really embarrassed as a father, because I needed to make sure my children and my family understood that that was a situation where we should be more aware of our surroundings. It was not the best scenario.
And we have to teach that, I don't know how long ago. I mean, if you go back 300 or 400 years, we lived in much more dangerous times back then. Society has gotten complacent. I don't want to say, in some ways, soft. I mean, I will say soft, and it has to do with a lot of things. We coming out of World War II, Great Depression into World War II, America has seen probably the greatest growth and success of any country in the world. And that has given us a level of amazing opportunity and comfort, if you will. Well, with that comfort comes complacency, because we think, oh, we live in this perfectly safe place. The majority of the time, there are dangerous places in our country. And this has only exacerbated the problem, because like you said, everybody's sucked into this. We're immune because we don't think there's a threat. When the reality that threats are going up all across this country. I mean, the shooting that occurred last night in Walmart, and that are happening all across the country. I mean, there was a shooting at a club in Colorado Springs just a few nights prior to this. God forbid the shooting that occurred at the University of Virginia with the 3 football players this week. Situational awareness is awareness that, hey, bad things can happen to good people. Bad things can happen in good locations. We never know when it's going to happen. So having your head on a swivel and being aware of the scenario around you and thinking about, well, how do I get out of this situation? If something bad was to happen right now, where would I go?
Right.
What would I do? So
I spent more time than you understand. You probably don't, but I spent a lot of time as a child. We had a break-in when I was a child. I'm not going to go into the long story, but I had a babysitter, and someone broke into our home. and there was a sexual assault. I was a part in witnessing way too much, actually went after the guy at one point in time, and spent the next 10 to 12 years trying to really calm and self-talk myself. How, doors locked. I mean, the amount of things that I went through, I couldn't spend the night at a friend's house because nobody cared. They didn't care if windows were locked or doors were locked, and they didn't understand that it could happen.
Yes.
And when you understand that something can happen, it changes your perspective on everything. That individual broke into our home because the young babysitter mentioned to her best friend that she was going to be at X house, and she yelled it through the window, and her older brother, who was addicted to drugs and a very bad human, heard it. And so, just telling someone you're out of town, like announcing to the world these things. And we check in everywhere that we're at. And so it is a challenging thing. Personally, I only, that's a very short version, because it's nothing compared to some of the trauma that's existed with people, and what you've been through. But just an empathetic statement is all I'm making, is that I understand the feeling of that awareness. And then one other point, the founding fathers, I think it was John Adams, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and you go back on anything I've said, but they said that we are soldiers, so our children can be teachers, so their children can be artists. And you and I both know, and you just alluded to it, when you create a generation of artists, you create a generation of creatives, and creatives are beautiful because the free mind is an amazing thing. And the generations before them created that level of freedom in their brain, the space. But a generation of artists will always have to become soldiers again.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. And sometimes you have to, I think, start to become the soldier now. So the awareness is crucial.
Yeah, there should be a balance in this life. And I'm going to come back to that point. You said that nothing compared to the trauma that potentially you or your friends have seen, and that's just not true. Trauma is trauma, regardless, whether you see it on the battlefield, whether you see it as a kid because somebody broke into your house, and it is the same, regardless of what you've seen. The impact on the brain and the scars that it leaves, and overcoming it. Everyone has a different path on how we do that. But having that level of awareness that trauma can occur is a really big thing. So I really try and encourage people that are out there that, one, if you've been through trauma, A, you're not alone. B, you don't have to figure it out by yourself. And C, there is no easy button. But I will tell you this. There are a lot of people that have been through trauma that, we get into some of the concepts that sit on the X, and the X is kind of the point of the attack, the crisis. There are a lot of people that just sit on that and feel sorry for themselves, and they're convinced they'll never get past it. And it starts with you. That's the reality. You have to be the one that drives forward. You have to be the one that has to accept that this bad thing happened. You have to be the one that figures out how to deal with it and come to grips with it, and then drive forward. I mean, it's that last component, action, that makes all the difference in this world. We are living in a victim society. Everybody wants to be a victim. If something bad happened to them, they want to be a victim. And they want to blame and point fingers at someone else and say, I'm broken and I deserve someone to come save me, whether it's the government or something else. And I will challenge that thinking and say that the most successful people out there are self-leaders. Despite the trauma they've been through, despite the adversity they've been through, they've figured out how to lead themselves forward. And there's no one who's super successful. And I don't define success by the amount of money you have in your bank account, because there are definitely people who are wealthy who were given wealth because their parent or other people before gave that to them.
Right.
I'm talking about people who grinded and achieved success, whether that's through a hard job, or whether that could be through wealth, it could be through whatever accomplishments. It was because they didn't sit there and feel sorry for themselves. So if you've been through trauma, don't ever compare to someone else. Don't say, oh, well, they've been through worse, so what happened to me is nothing, and I'm just going to swallow it and try and just deal with it. Man, you got to own it. You got to own it. You got to figure it out. Coming full circle to balance, I agree 1,000%. It's great to be a creative. In some ways, I have creative tendencies. I like to create content. I like to create things, but I also was a warrior first, and I learned how to be a warrior. And I think that there is a balance in this life. I think that there's three classes of society, and if none of you have ever read the book Atlas Shrugged, you absolutely should, through Ayn Rand. And this is where you actually, and what's interesting is people that read it, you will have the people who say, oh, wow, I see the correlations. And then you have, realists.
Right.
And then you have the people who will say, oh my God, that's so stupid. That'll never happen. Idealists. And what Ayn Rand talks about, she wrote that book in the 40s, and it was about a society where the society gets soft and the society reaches the high point of civilization where, if you look at America, probably, I'd say we hit that point probably 20 years ago or so. And we were booming. Everything was amazing. The technology boom, the explosion in Silicon Valley, the digital revolution that occurred. And it led us down this path of having amazing things and the access to them. I mean, everybody in America now has a phone. I mean, we have government programs that enable people to have connectivity. And with this connectivity gives you opportunity. But in the book, what they talk about is there's basically producers, the people who work and have produced, and there are consumers, and there are people who have decided, well, I don't want to work, and I just, you people created great things, so I just want to live off the fruits of the labor that's happened. However you look at society, I mean, there's some levels of that. And when you have high levels of production, like you said, you allow for more teachers and you allow for more creatives, which is awesome. I mean,
right. We all want that you literally want that as a parent. If you don't want them, you do not want your children to go through what you went through,
right.
But you want them to have the lessons from what you went through so they don't have to go through it. Like it's not the other way around. You don't want them to experience it. I don't want my kids to feel what I felt growing up. But darn it, they need to know to lock the doors. And there's a reason why you do it.
Well, and they need to know how to protect.
Right.
I mean, there's 4 areas that I talk about. I call it the rule of P's. That you always should put time and effort into every single day. You should check one of these boxes. Number 1 is physical. Move your body. This machine that you were given at birth can do amazing things, and it'll take care of you. Taking care of it reaps rewards. Your immune system is better. You feel better. You have more energy. You are able to handle more stress. You're able to get more done. My fitness saved my life. Doctors told me that the amount of trauma my body sustained, if I had not been in the shape I was in, I probably would not have survived. Wow. Number 2, personal. We put so much time and effort into professional, endeavors, whether that's education or whether that's our job, but we have an entire personal life. And I watch all these people who take for granted the personal side of their lives, or they keep kicking the can down the road on the personal side of their lives. And that's a train wreck. But that's a big part of who we are. So you can't ignore it. You've got to take care. Don't ignore and don't take for granted the personal side of your lives, your family, and your relationships. Number 3 is professional. Put time and effort into it, man. Go big, think big, man. Go after those things.
Produce.
Yeah, produce. And we'll come back to that. Protection. This life we live in is dangerous, and you need to put protections in place, like you talked about. I mean, from the simple things like locking our doors or security systems to more complicated things like how do we protect our assets and our money through insurance and things like this. And then the last one is profit. Whether you like it or not, money is a necessity in this world. We need it to make things happen. And I was raised poor. We were poor. I never thought about money. I'll be honest. When I was in the military, I really didn't think about money. We lived paycheck to paycheck. And it was only when I got out of the military and I started running my own business and I met friends who were very, who had done very well for themselves that I started to get smarter. And I started thinking about, man, how do I put my money to work? And now it's a daily thing for me. I look at, okay, how am I putting my money to work? And everyone should have a mindset of that. You know, and I've met people who are like, man, I can't rub two dimes together to make a spark, a nickel.
Right.
And I'm like, well, guess what? If you put a penny in the bank and yield any kind of interest on it, that's a profit. That's a mindset of profit. And there are millions and millions of people who came here with nothing and set just a little bit aside, whatever they could, and it grew into amazing things. That's a mindset of profit. So all those things. And now, like you said, we come full circles: consumers, producers, and I add one additional category, the protectors. So in this day and age, where you should look at yourself and ask yourself, everybody's a consumer. I mean, we're all consumers. We
Right.
consume information, we consume food, we consume energy, we consume all kinds of things. It's part of being human. But what level do you produce? What level do you produce? Do you work? That's production. You're providing a service to someone. I don't care what it is. If you're a server, you're producing, you know, a service, you know, to get food and to get, you know, hopefully a pleasant experience as you're getting that food. If you are you know, if you host a podcast, you're producing great content that people are getting that information. And then the last one, a protector. If you, at the end of the day, really, this is a message for men, but women too. You should always be thinking about, how will I protect my family? And when you think about that triad, consumers, producers, protectors, the question you should ask yourself, am I consuming more than those other two areas? That's an issue, because you're now lopsided and you're just sucking life energy without giving anything back. There's another term for it, and you guys aren't going to like it. It's parasite. That's what parasites do. They just consume off a host without giving anything in return. So in this life, if you want to be a good leader, if you want to be effective, those are the two areas you should be looking at. Am I producing through work, through effort, through being creative, whatever it is? And am I able to protect myself and my family and the things that I've built? And I think there are a lot of people who, unfortunately, all they look at is, what can I consume?